This week, In Defense of Ska would like to give a special shout out to Patreon subscriber Kevin WK. Kevin was our 69th subscriber, bringing our total to $311. Patreon is instrumental in helping us keep our podcast sustainable. We can't thank you enough if you already subscribe. And if you've been on the fence for a while, please join. It's only a few bucks. We have so many ideas we'd like to push forward with In Defense of Ska, and your subscription helps us move towards that goal. You can be like Kevin WK. Think about it. Patron 420, pushing our monthly goal towards $1,312. So think it over. And for now, on with the show.
There were a lot of different ska bands in the 90s who each had their own interpretation of the genre, but only one band that we're aware of worshiped the devil. Mephiskapheles, which by the way is the greatest ska pun of all time, were quite an interesting band, even aside from the whole being a satanic ska band and dubbing their debut album God Bless Satan. They mixed wild experimental music and jazz elements with traditional ska grooves, even going so far as to have an upright bass to maintain the walking bass sound of the Skatalites. And even though they didn't actually worship the devil, they did blow a lot of minds at their concerts, including mine back in 1995. For this episode, we brought on 3 members that were in the group in the 90s and continue to play in the band to this day: singer Andre Worrell, bassist Michael Bitz, and trombonist Greg Robinson.
Growing up in a religious household, how would a Mephiskapheles record been received if your mom found it while cleaning up your room?
I'm sure she would have been upset. I did have God Bless Satan when I lived at my parents' house. So,
oh wow,
yeah.
Did you have to hide it?
I mean, I probably hid it, but I don't remember feeling like it was actually satanic,
right?
But I knew that like the imagery on it would have like gotten her upset if she saw it.
I remember going with you to see Mephiskapheles at the Cactus Club, and I was expecting something like much more over the top.
Yeah.
Much more like overtly, like theatrically satanic.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that at all.
Nah. I mean, they're musically interesting, and they have like kind of an intense persona on stage, but it's not. They play into the satanic stuff in a much more subtle way.
Yeah, it's not like Venom.
Yeah.
It's not like, all this like crazy stage banter.
And it's not like, I mean, there are a few songs where it is part of the content, but it's not every song. I mean, it's just a couple.
Yeah.
But it's a good band. I was excited that we got to talk about not just their God Bless Satan debut record, which I think is probably their more popular record, but we got to talk a little bit more about their 2 records that came after, which are interesting, and they went in an interesting direction.
Yeah, I'm stoked for everybody to hear this conversation.
All right, so we have 3 members of Mephiskapheles here. Why don't we just go around real quick? Just everyone say who's here, what instrument you play, and then we'll go forward.
All right, this is Greg Robinson, and I play trombone in Mephiskapheles.
All right, this is Mike Bitz, and I play upright bass.
This is the Grilly vocals.
So I want to say October 2020, you guys started doing seances on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. I assume this was a thing you're doing for COVID because there's no live shows.
Yeah, it's not only to keep the fans engaged, but to keep ourselves engaged in the band.
There's little videos out there kind of teasing it, and there's like clips of like insane religious people talking and possessed people. So can we actually find out what a Mephiskapheles seance is like?
It varies month to month, but the basic format is like a variety format where we have different members do different segments, vary from musical segments and master classes to examinations of the stuff they do outside of the band. Like our guitar player Adam, who is a scooter mechanic on the side, or in his real life, I guess. And and also races motorcycles and things like that. So we have just different segments that give you a multiple views of the band, basically.
I see.
Yeah, and also archival stuff, old videos and music from the archives that has never been heard before. Live recordings, things like that. So you can hear the band in all its different phases.
Nice. Yeah. So there's like little monthly get-togethers with the hardcore fans.
Yeah, more or less a fan club concept where they subscribe and they get exclusive merch before anyone else, and they get access to the full archive of all the seances, so they can go back and look at all the shows that we put together over the last couple of years.
They get to know the band in a different way. It's more of, I guess, a closer light, because they get to see and experience with a sort of ideas that drive the band forward, and they get to, like Greg said, experience past aspects of the band's, as far as performances and stuff go, which some of them might not have ever seen or heard before. So it's a way of just to reiterate, it's a way of keeping touch with the fans, and a way of just bringing them into the life of the band.
I just want to add, like a lot of ska bands, we're very close with our fans. We rely on the fans to give us feedback and to inspire us to push this thing forward, to move forward stylistically, and to just keep trying to impress our fans, basically. And it's been that way for the whole history of the band. So this is, again, just a way for us to have a deeper connection to the fans and vice versa.
So last year there was this Loudwire article about you guys.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Satanic Ska is a real thing that actually existed. Seemed out of nowhere to me, but I feel like I saw that getting shared everywhere. I think like the thing that about it is that it cracked me up is that it was, even though the article, it's clear the article's familiar with you, the way it was presented and the way some of the people were receiving it was very like literal, like Satanic Ska band. I mean, and I also think it's funny because you guys have been around for several decades. That kind of like weird shock about a Satanic Ska band. What was that like for you guys when that was going around?
We were surprised also that this popped up. I don't think it fully went viral. I mean, it did get shared a lot though, and we liked the article when it came out. Actually, we felt like, okay, someone gets what we're doing and wants to tell other people about it. Good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not straight viral like you said, but I did see, like I was saying, I did see it kind of go outside of the ska circle. The ska kind of. Everybody sharing the ska article. I think that's what kind of intrigued me about it. Yeah,
as well it should. I mean, we're a total novelty on the music scene at large. There's nothing else like us, really. Let alone in the ska scene, but not anywhere. So, it's unique. So, it's remarkable. Therefore, I guess.
Have you guys had any sort of interactions with people who have been over the top with their reaction to your band, either positively or negatively?
In Defense of Ska, we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Inside the Mix podcast. Whether you're a synth music producer, artist, or enthusiast, this is the podcast for you. Every fortnight, Mark serves up interviews with synth music artists and provides you with an insight into their careers, creative process, influences, and music industry tips and stories. Let's dive in.
The last one I had was, I guess we were on the Streetlight tour, and I don't remember the club or the city at this point, but we had some fans that I was talking to after, and they were pretty, they were into the band, but at the same time, they seemed pretty fucking freaked out. And so we had a discussion about the ideal concept of Satan, and they were full-grown adults, and I sort of had to break the idea and concept that we have behind it, and especially my take on the whole thing. And they were also freaked out by that. And it ended up being, well, Satan is real, you know. And at that point of the discussion, after having a very clear, you know, cogent discussion leading up to that point, their reactions to my answers to their question was, but he is real. And that's when I had to be, I think I need to go pack some stuff up because the gig's over. And,
tell us your concept. Like, you know, what did you say to them to explain the concept to them?
Well, I was just trying to tell them that, hey, you know, we have this big Christian, although it's not supposed to, but it is, and it's everywhere. And in some cases, historically and today, it's in some ways a type of thumb on your back or on your head, and under which most people stand. Some gladly do that. And we sort of like pushing back, taking the piss, showing the cracks in that armor, and they weren't hearing it at all. You know, I guess it's because that's just how, even though they love the band or maybe like the band or
love the music,
enjoy the music of the band, yeah. At the same time, when you start talking to them about it, and they bring the questions up, and you give them a response, it's not kind of what they want. I think what they were hoping for was more of a jolly ha ha ha, and it's a bit more than that. I mean, that is included. It's a, you know,
yeah,
there is some tongue cheek shake there, but I mean, let's be real. Satan as a real entity, they were like, you know, not ready to have that thrown out the window.
I think people are naturally very, very superstitious, you know, and it makes them nervous, you know, when you come out there and you're making light of something that they are very superstitious about. And but getting back to your original question, as far as the over the top reactions, I got to say, like, as far as positive over the top reactions, we are getting that every single night at the gigs. And I'm talking about people who first heard our music when they were 10 or 11 years old, never got a chance to see the band live. And this is every night, multiple people like this coming up. And I mean, ecstatic, buying everything on the merch table. I mean, like, the thing about our music is it's really not for everybody, but if the people who love it really, really love it.
I remember probably maybe a decade ago or something around there was like started hearing about the Satanic Temple, which is not the same thing as the Anton LaVey's, you know, Church of Satan. Yeah.
We have no connection to either of those organizations.
Yeah. But the idea of the Satanic Temple wasn't that Satan was real. It was more similar to what Andre was saying. It's the idea that, like, pushing back on the fact that, like, our country is supposed to be not religious, but it's very Christian. And it's like kind of like an antagonistic way of being atheist. So, but I mean, that was never factored into the concept of the band, right?
For us, it's, you know, really more about having a great time every night. You know, for a lot of religious people, you wait until the end of your life to have a great time if you were good. If you're bad, you're going to have a really bad time. We're about having a good time every night here on this earth. And in a way, that's really what Satan represents for us, you know, having the party right here, right now, and bringing it to the people, bringing it to the fans, and having them enjoy it with us. That is the true indulgence of Mephiskapheles.
But it does relate to what you're talking about, Aaron, about American freedom and all that stuff, because it's freedom for everybody, right? Not just for the select few. We're supposed to all enjoy freedom. So
sure. So I saw you guys play. It had to be like 95, I think, because I'm here in California. I know that. I know your first record was already released. Your second record was not released yet, and I saw you play at the Cactus Club in San Jose, I think. I don't know if that rings a bell. You've played so many shows.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Cactus Club. Do you recall who we played with? Do you recall who else was played? Was it Bucko 9 or?
I don't remember who you played with, but I do. I do your opening song is burned into my brain because you guys played the song Mephiskapheles.
Yep.
The whole song, particularly the end part where you do the the count to 6 and then the 666.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my brain was just when I was watching that.
Good. That's what we wanted to have happen.
Amazing.
I was also at that show, and the thing, when you usually think about satanic music, you think of bands like, Venom or Slayer. And so I hadn't heard you guys at all. I just came along with the rest of Aaron's band, expecting like this really kind of violent, scary sound. And then it was really nice ska.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever get that sort of perception where, people are expecting one thing and then they show up and they are pleasantly surprised?
That's what we're all about, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole history of the band right there.
Yeah, I think it would be if there was anybody who had envisioned exactly what you are, like if they were just the band was just described to them and then they actually envisioned exactly what you are. That's probably that would be interesting if that ever happened.
I mean, you got to remember, we've been around as a band since 1991, so we're kind of a known entity by now. But it still happens. People still get dragged to the show by their friends, or they say, "Oh, I found the CD. I really liked it, so I had to come to the show and check it out." And their minds are blown that way, like just seeing us for the first time ever does have that effect on people sometimes, where they just lose their minds. And I guess it's because there's so much music. I mean, we really pack a lot of actual music into. I mean, it's not just a beat and some, 3 major chords or whatever. This is music that we're playing, and it's a lot to take in, honestly, for some people. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way to explaining why we're, as our drummer says, we're not a supermarket. We're a delicatessen.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those elements. Let's start with the horns. Your horns are very, very unique.
That's right.
Tell me a little. I know there's jazz, there's jazz education behind the horn players. Is that true?
Well, in the sense that the original bass player, as well as Al McCabe and Osho, were all students at Manhattan School of Music. So yeah. To that extent, yeah. But it's more coming out of the New York City jazz scene in general.
Yeah.
That everybody was trying to be part of at that time.
And so they just landed in your band instead.
Well, it was a process. I mean, the core of it formed. Then they put out an ad in the paper to get the bass. They said upright bass player needed, and then he had the connection to these other jazz cats. And then, and so that's basically how that happened.
The melodies that the horn players write, and the way that they sound, like they don't sound out of tune, but they sound like there's something that's like unique to the way they play with each other. Can you just talk about that at all?
Well, I mean, it depends on the tune. Obviously, it depends on which cut you're talking about. But I mean, we harmonize a lot of the stuff on the first record. And some of the stuff on the second record, nothing was written down. In other words, we just made up our parts over many, many rehearsals and many, many gigs. Mm-hmm. So we arrived at some unorthodox harmonies that way.
The harmonies are interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, some of that just evolved sort of in the rehearsal room, like what sounded good at the time, and then we just stuck with it, tried to remember it, and stuck with it. Later. For Maximum Perversion, we started to bring charts in, and so guys would actually harmonize the line. Like, for example, "Attack of the Geniuses," the first song on Maximum Perversion. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah.
Like, that was all written out by Al McCabe. Like the horn soli part in the middle, where the horns all play the same line. It was all written out. So he figured out the harmonies in advance and figured out what he wanted to do. And he was quite an advanced musician, at that time. So it's both. It's some of the jazz education that you're referring to, and it's also just whatever worked in the studio. Because we were basically a live band all the time. We just worked a lot of stuff out in the rehearsal room.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. And like you were saying earlier too, if you listen to section, it's like, it's pretty complicated. It isn't just like one section, 3 chords, chorus, 3 different chords.
Right. No. Yeah. I mean, it's not particularly complicated, but it is different from, we're taking it at a different angle than other bands. Basically, we're coming at more of a jazz angle, bringing in a lot of diverse influences that were happening in New York City at the time the band was really forming.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name some of those influences?
Well, number 1, the Skatalites.
Nice.
Number 2, the Scofflaws. Okay, I mean that's just for the ska, but both those bands were extremely active in New York in the early '90s.
Yeah,
and we saw them a lot, and we played on the same bills with them.
Yeah, the Skatalites relocated to New York in like the late '80s. Is that right?
Yeah,
and they
correct.
really got going in the early '90s again as a live outfit.
That's right, and they were playing all the time, and it was very affordable for us to go to the shows. And
the Scofflaws, they'd been around since like the mid '80s, but they were called the New Bohemians.
The New Bohemians.
Yeah. And then they sold their name to Edie Brickell for I think a few $100 or something.
That's a fact. I think it was $1,000.
And so, but they were a little bit different of a band in those days anyway. So they became more that sort of jazzy sound as they progressed.
Yeah. They had 2 peaks really, like the early peak and then the later one when Buford was kind of at the fore.
Mm-hmm.
But in the early days, it was the front line was Richie Brooks on tenor, Buford on trombone, Paul Gephardt on alto, and Mike Drance on bari sax and second vocal. And that was just a killer lineup.
Along with Victor Rice, our guru and mentor in many ways.
Yeah, we used to open for them a lot in the very early days. And they were really an inspiration.
Oh, so we were also into Bucket's band also.
Toasters?
Oh God, you're admitting this. You're admitting this. I mean, I know it's true. Absolutely. The Toasters, they were a big influence. The tempo is everything.
Well, an influence as in they were like at the time the New York City ska band. So I mean, we would go see a lot of shows and stuff. And I don't know if it was a straightforward, influence where you maybe were willing to try pick here or there kind of thing. It was just what you were into and what you heard. I mean, it's the same for the Skatalites. I mean, well, the Skatalites are a little different because it's the fucking Skatalites. But yeah, I guess subconsciously there was influence from those 3 places as far as ska music was. But then you also had some of the other bands too that people were into, from the English angle. So it's a bit of everything, but it's also just us as people going to different types of shows and liking different types of music and wanting to have something that wasn't going to be a run-of-the-mill sort of sound within the ska scene, and it was as run-of-the-mill as being like what was generally I guess happening with all the other bands. Not to take anything from them. I mean, we played with them, we used to hang out, go to the shows, but also you wanted to just separate yourself from that, and also separate yourself from the current past history from like I said, across the pond, those bands, and being conscious of wanting to make such a statement, I think is kind of what gave the band its unique sort of place and oomph at the beginning.
I want to add something about what Andre's saying about the Toasters and the influences and stuff. Is when I came in the band, which is a little after Andre was already in the band, like what I got from them was that they wanted to displace the Toasters as the top ska band in New York City, which we ultimately did.
Yeah.
But
yes,
but that was, I didn't know much about the Toasters. I didn't know much about ska in general. I had played 2 gigs with City Beat. That was my ska resume when I joined Mephiskapheles. But I got from them that like these guys, the Toasters, these are the top dogs, but they are yesterday's news, and we're going to topple them, and we're going to be the number one band in New York. That was a real
feeling within the band.
Yeah, to motivate for motivation, you know.
Because when I read Mark Wasserman's book, I think there was a part where it was like, yeah, Scofflaws, they are the band, they are the big influence. You know, we wouldn't be a band without them, and the Toasters, they're yesterday's news. Or something like that.
And yet the Scofflaws were not in the Third Wave movie.
Nope.
What's up with that? Completely omitted.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, they're one of those bands, I think that they didn't quite reach everybody, you know, especially if you weren't based out of New York, or if you weren't like a Moon Records aficionado.
It's like writing the history of baseball and leaving out Ty Cobb or something.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, that first record in particular is one of the best, I would say one of the best 90s ska records out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Yep.
Let's talk about the beginning of the band. So the band starts, well, okay, so before the band starts, there's a hardcore band called The Shaved Pigs. Who was in that band?
That band was Brendan. I can't remember all the players in that band. Andy, Ron,
that guy Peter was in the band. I don't know any of these people's last names.
Yeah, I don't remember their last names, but I know the band. I know the players from that band. Some of the names are escaping me now. But anyway, they were a New York, hardcore band.
And then a couple of those members, like they wanted to start a ska band.
No, the only person was Brendan.
Oh, so it's just Brendan. Okay. And so then there's I know you're kind of in the very, very first version of this new ska band, which is originally called Scatterbrain.
Yes, it was called Scatterbrain for a very specific reason. Yes. And,
what was the reason?
The reason was that I had done a logo, and it was basically a Rude Boy's head exploding. So it was Scatterbrain. And we were just trying to, put our own stamp on shit. You know, like I said before, we love that music and stuff, but we don't want to necessarily, put ourselves within that category. We wanted to be more than just, another band that's basing themselves on the checkerboard ideology, basically.
So then the problem with the name was that there was another band called Scatterbrain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you go, obviously the next name is going to be Mephiskapheles.
Close enough.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I mean, if someone comes up with that name, you pretty much have to name the band that.
You have to.
You're not going to come up with anything better than that.
And that band, that name was good, because I remember we were all coming up with names, and that totally makes sense because of not just wanting to be a ska band. You like a lot of music, like a lot of rock and roll music and stuff. So that made sense. It was perfect.
I love that you want to be ska band, but you want to be different. So you incorporate the whole ska pun name, but you do it in a way that probably no one would do. Well,
I mean, you got to remember, there weren't as many bands with ska pun names then as there are now.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, we were basically looking at the Skatalites and going, oh, well, they did it, so I guess anyone can do it,
No, Mephiskapheles, best ska pun band name, hands down.
Oh, for sure.
You're not going to do better. No one name your band a ska pun going forward, because you're not Mephiskapheles.
Were there any other?
Also a curse, though, in that we have been called Mephiskapheles, and people have been asking us if we're from Memphis. We just played them.
Seriously, like no joke.
Yeah, how often do people mess up your name?
Often.
How often is it just Mephistopheles? I can't even say the real one.
Mephistopheles.
Yeah. I got Mephiskapheles burned in my brain.
Hardly
ever. Okay.
It's mostly more iterations of weird spellings of this wild name.
Yeah.
So Mike and Greg, when do you join the band?
I joined in mid '91.
I joined in about 92 to 93 when the original bass player, Vittel, my friend, moved on to other things. I would just say that, the upright bass has always been at the core of Mephiskapheles because the ska music was created on that instrument. And we are very close and dear to the origins of the sound. And so it's always been very important to us, and it's always been very important to me as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, like, on one hand, you want to, you want to push the genre forward, and you want to do it in a way that it hasn't been done before, but you find that the use of an upright bass is an important part of the tradition that you want to uphold.
Yes,
very much so.
It defines the rhythm of the band. I mean, the walking bass line is core to what we're doing.
Yeah.
As it was with the Skatalites.
Exactly. That's the other thing. The Skatalites that we totally all, look to, they created something that was, totally unique. So as a band, why wouldn't you want to try to do that yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, because I like how there is a you have that ska bounce, but there's the modern kind of weird jazzy stuff. There's there's a little bit of sometimes a menacing vibe to the chords you choose. This is not stuff Skatalites would do. Some of the ways you write the music and stuff, but that bounce is there.
But the Skatalites did write a lot in minor keys.
That's true.
A lot in a minor key, which a lot of modern ska bands don't. Because they think it's going to turn the audience off. Well, we don't believe that. We think it's just part of music.
Sure.
Yeah, that's Don Drummond was basically wrote everything that he wrote in minor key. Yeah. And he wrote most of the music. So
there you go.
One thing I wanted to ask really quick, just backing up a little bit around the name Mephiskapheles. You guys said you were bouncing around other names. Do you guys remember any of the other names that you didn't use?
No.
Done. All right.
Andre's the only one who could answer that. It's not there.
All right.
And as of right now, no.
Gotcha. All good.
What would the ska scene look like in New York in like 91, 92 when you guys were in the early phase? Like, I understand that there was an 80s New York scene.
Yes.
A lot of those bands broke up or moved on to other styles. A few of them, like the Toasters, continued on. But it seemed like also the early 90s was a period of new bands beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious from your perspective what it was like.
It was an awesome time in the early 90s because there were a lot of ska bands, but most often the bills were mixed, and we'd be playing with punk bands, we'd be playing with hardcore bands or reggae bands, and all kinds of people came out to the shows. Punks, mods, skins, and it was like a very exciting time in New York City because it was like an underground scene that was getting bigger, and it was exciting. So that would be my recollections of it.
I agree. It was really exciting. It was underground, but totally hip. And you got to remember, Giuliani did not get elected. He didn't take office till 93. And that's when the crackdown on nightlife started. And so up to that point, New York was a very open town. And yeah, the mix of people, rude boys dressed to the nines, skinheads, mods, punkers, it was awesome. And it was totally under the radar of the mainstream.
Yes, it was cool.
Media coverage or whatever. It was a completely underground scene.
Shows were always packed.
Yeah, the shows were packed. People danced their butts off. It was amazing.
Where were the can you name some of the main venues?
Sure.
That you guys were playing at in those years?
TGIF,
which was New Frontier, which was at a TGI Fridays on 5th Avenue and 13th Street that had formerly been not the Texas Roadhouse, but
Lone Star.
The Lone Star. Cafe, which was a blues venue where James Brown and people like that had played. So that was a big one. The New Music Cafe on West Broadway and Canal.
Yeah, Canal Street.
Wetlands, of course.
Wetlands. Mm-hmm. Yep. Our first show in Wetlands was, I believe, August of '91. I think.
Do you remember who else played that show?
Skadanks, I think, but I'm not positive. I think it was the Skadanks. But you could look in the Wetlands book. Do you have that one, Aaron?
No, I don't have that one.
Oh, you got to get that, man. It's got all the ads for every show that ever happened at the Wetlands, so you can really see the whole history of New York ska. Since Wetlands was like a central venue for our scene back then.
So the Scofflaws, Skatalites, Toasters, these are bands that were more like came before and were influences. What bands did you consider to be contemporaries in the ska world?
We grew up with the Slackers in many ways, and we were always on shows together.
Yep.
And in many ways, we cut our teeth on the same shows. So definitely the Slackers would be in that mix. Bim Scala Bim from Boston.
High Tasters. We playing with them quite early.
Stubborn.
Yep. Stubborn All-Stars. Skinnerbox.
Yeah. Contemporaries. I mean, when I think of exact contemporaries, I think of the Slackers, High Tasters.
Insteps. What about the Insteps?
Sure. They disappeared, but
yeah,
they were playing for a while there.
Skavuvi and the Epitones.
Yeah.
Well, they came later, though.
They came later, yeah.
They came later. We're talking about early 90s vintage. I mean, there's a few. Deal's Gone Bad is one.
Gone Bad. I-7.
Inspector 7. I know we're missing some big ones.
Yeah, so it seems like, the scene in this era, not quote unquote traditional, but definitely bands are more connected to the fashion and connected to the jazzier elements of ska in the scene that you guys kind of come from in early 90s in New York. Does that feel true to you?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Because here in California, a little different. Yeah.
No one thought of us as a jazz band back then, man. Like nobody thought of us as a jazz band at that point. Like that's been a later thing where they classify us as a weird jazz band. Like we were just considered a regular old ska band along with all the other ska bands. Just that we sounded very different.
The word jazz never popped in my head at the time as a fan, but
right.
As an adult, like listening back to all those records, I'm like, oh, these guys are obviously into jazz. Like that's obviously an element.
Absolutely, it's certainly true.
It just completely went over my head, in the 90s.
That's understandable. I mean, Osho and I we had a day job working in this office at this place called Second Floor Music, and there was a rehearsal space attached to it. So we'd be sitting there doing office tasks, and in the room next door, people like Freddie Hubbard or Jackie McLean or, Art Blakey and people like that were rehearsing. So we were very close to jazz, and there's no way that doesn't rub off.
Mm-hmm.
We were total jazz fans anyway, at least the horns. Speaking for the horn section, I was a rock fan too, and Andre has very wide-ranging musical tastes.
It seems like, New York, too, has just more jazz in it than maybe, like, here in California. Like, you can easily not be part of the jazz scene or see the jazz scene at all if you have no interest in it. Like, It's not so intermingled, I guess.
I guess you're right. New York's always been a jazz mecca since the 20s, so... as horn players, you gravitate towards that kind of music because that's the music that features the horns the most. We were definitely very jazz influenced, but the point was that we didn't allow it to go completely over to the jazz side. The Skatalites were also extremely jazz influenced, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Tommy McCook was a jazz saxophone player. He's a Coltrane fanatic till his dying day. So it was a natural thing, but it's just we combined it with these guys from the punk scene, and then of course we all got into metal and that influenced us so it was really always supposed to be a combination of things. We were always trying to mix diverse influences together and come up with something original.
So the first release is called Demon, but with the word demo.
Yeah.
This was were Mike and Greg, were you in the band when that album was recorded and released?
No.
Okay.
No. I joined the band based on hearing that demo that had just been recorded, and Osho brought it into work and played it for me and said, we want to get rid of our trombone player. Would you be interested?
What did you think of it?
I thought it was great. And then I thought it sounded great. And then I went down and went to 2 live shows, and I was also impressed by that. And so I said, sure, I'll do this. But of course I was freelancing in a lot of bands at the time. So it wasn't like a huge life-changing decision at the time. It was just, yeah, sure. This band sounds good. I'll play with you guys. Great.
So Andre, where did you record that demo?
Oh shit.
Coyote, right? Wasn't it Coyote?
That's from Brooklyn, yeah.
Coyote, where the Slackers recorded their first couple albums, I believe.
Okay. Was it a quick recording, or was it a little longer process?
It wasn't that long, to be quite honest. No, it seemed to just take the time that it took. It wasn't like we slaved over it or anything. Yeah.
You got to get that demo out when you're starting out.
You want to talk about quick? God Bless Satan was recorded in, I believe, recorded and mixed in like 4 days or something.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Let's. I do want to talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the songs on that. So the Bumblebee Tuna, your infamous song Bumblebee Tuna. Now tell me if this is true. I read that the band was playing a cover of Desmond Decker's 007, and then somebody in the band started singing that song over it, and this was the beginnings of that song.
Sounds accurate, but I wasn't there.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
That's what Brian has told me that. Brian Martin, our keyboard player, told me that that's how it happened. I mean, they were already playing it when I joined.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But we were still working out the arrangement when I joined. So.
I mean, I was there, but I can't remember.
Were the arrangements always being tweaked with, or at least for a while being tweaked with?
Yes. We had a great method of working in the studio where if anyone of the 8 of us spoke up and said, I don't think this is working, then that would be carefully considered. And if they were right, it would be admitted that they were right. There was no ego coming into it, which was really a refreshing way to work.
Yeah.
So that's why those songs are so well crafted, because we were not afraid to tell each other, hey, this isn't that great. Like, let's do something different. And no one took offense. So I always chalk it up to largely to that, because we just had such an open, collective kind of mentality in those early days. And that's what we've tried to preserve in the later iterations of the band, is that same spirit of open collaboration and let's just go for quality. You know what I mean? It's not about anyone's ego or spotlighting this person or that person. It's about the overall thing. So that goes all the way back to our earliest attempts at making music.
In Defense of Ska, we'll be right back.
Yeah, like who has 3 life-size cardboard
I'm
cutouts?
finding out nobody has this.
But we're faking that we're important enough to do this.
Like, we went to the Leafs fan zone, which I was tossed out of. The first thing they said was, sir, that big cutout, it's too big. I don't think you're going to get in. Jonesy here says, no. The media people said that we have to be as close to the cameras as possible. So can you show us where that is? And she went, oh, okay. And then as we walked by, you looked at me like, oh, and I was like, oh, that worked. So the next security guy, I tried Jonesy's line and it worked.
We also like to shed our tunes on the road before we record them. This is one of the reasons why we have a limited amount of released music, is that we want to get it right. So I don't think we've ever just gone into the studio saying, we got to make a record, here's the songs. These things have been shed and deconstructed and reconstructed on the road over and over again, to the point when we hit the studio, we're ready to just nail it and lay it down.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, the amount of work that goes into the writing and the structuring and everything, and then the tightness of the group. Like the tightness of the group always struck me as being like loose, but like still hitting the mark. Like, so you kind of have that mix of being tight and loose at the same time.
Mm-hmm. It's a good observation.
Like, what is your story about the origins of Bumblebee Tuna?
I don't remember the origins of that song, to be quite honest. I remember us doing it, and I remember being at I think it was the studio's called Giant, and 14th Street, and just trying to hash through the song. And yeah, and at the time there was this other cat that came up with an idea for the beginning of the song lyrically, and which we used to do, and then we just scrapped it. It was a little silly, and it's so long ago.
The elaborate arrangement of the song "On God Was Satan" was kind of done for that record. Like, we don't really perform that quite as long of an arrangement live, and we never really did. Yeah, with the chorus, just the girls and all that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of that was inspiration in the studio to make it that over the top.
Do you always get a positive response from that song live?
Yes.
Well, if we don't play it, we get a negative response.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Like that,
I feel like if you were somebody dragged to a Mephiskapheles show, you would find yourself singing along to that song.
It's our most popular number.
A lot of younger fans don't realize that it was actually a jingle. We came up with it, so we have to school them on the '70s history of Bumblebee Tuna.
Yeah, so I was in Mexico at a ska festival in 2019, and there was one of the opening bands. I can't even remember their name, but they weren't one of the bigger names. They played. I wasn't quite sure. Like, I recognized it, but I couldn't place it at first because they were playing Bumblebee Tuna, but because it was in Spanish, and I was like, "What is that song?" And then they went to the chorus, and they didn't sing English or Spanish. They just sang like la 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 la. Like, that was how they handled the chorus, and that's when I was like, "Oh my god, that's Bumblebee Tuna. They're covering Bumblebee Tuna. Great cover. You guys would be honored."
Maybe.
Yeah. We'll be the judge of that.
Could have played that a little tighter.
So you said 4 days of recording that, and recording and mixing?
Well, it was mixed later because we ended up getting another producer to do it. That's how we got Bill Laswell involved.
Yeah, Bill Laswell.
But so the recording session and the mixing session were like months apart. But we always worked really fast. We never had much budget. We basically didn't get paid for the gigs for like a year plus to save up the money to do that album. And when it came time to do it, we always would book the studio from the early morning till late at night and just hammer it out. And that particular one, we were really ready because we'd been playing a lot of gigs for 3 years already. And so most of the songs had been well played. There was a couple new ones that were added, but we just went in and pretended like we were doing the live show at the local bar at Nightingale's Bar or at Wetlands, and just acted like that and recorded it live, but with the ability to go back and overdub solos or whatever. Yeah, we just banged it out in 2 days, I think, the initial recording of it, if memory serves. I mean, it's only 13 songs, so 2 full days in the studio is plenty of time. We were extremely well rehearsed. So, and then mixing was another 2 days, months later.
You did not have a label at all when you recorded it. It was just a self thing.
Right.
And so Victor Rice produced during the recordings.
That's right. Victor Rice produced the recording session, and he did a great job because when we did connect with Bill Laswell and have Bill Laswell and Bob Musso mix it, they didn't ask us to re-record a single thing or add anything. all the tracks that Victor captured were great.
Yeah.
And then it was just a matter of Laswell doing what he does, which is dial in an awesome bass sound and an awesome frequency range, and I mean, the rough mixes that we gave to Bill Laswell were not particularly impressive, but when he actually mixed it for us, I mean, it became what it is today. You know, the classic that it is today.
Yeah.
Now, Victor, I think, like, you know, maybe not everyone knows this, especially if they're not in the New York ska scene, but he's a legend.
Yeah.
And you worked with him on this record. Did you work with him in other capacity as well, or just this one?
He was our touring bass player for some long tours in '96 and '97. He was when Mike Bitz was going to grad school. Victor filled in, and he did one of the epically long tours we did with the Blue Meanies. He was on that one where we went coast to coast. And some of that ended up on the Blue Meanies live album, of the Blue Meanies performances anyway. And then he also went with us to Europe on our first European tour in the spring of '96. Victor was with us, but on that one he played electric bass because taking the upright overseas was prohibitive.
Problem.
Yeah, but so he's been a friend of the band and a occasional sub, and
yeah, a long time.
Yeah.
Who drove Mephiskapheles over in Europe?
Who drove?
Yeah, did you guys drive yourselves or did you hire a driver?
Yeah, we drove ourselves. We had that was a wild tour because there was no cell phones or anything. They gave us 2 vans and a book of maps and a young female tour manager. that turned into a sword fight of who's going to sleep with the young tour manager. I mean, it was a crazy tour, and we went. It was 5.5 weeks, and we went to the far reaches of Poland and the eastern Germany, and I mean, and the Euro. There was no Euro at that time. There was no cell phone, so it was we were really just thrown out there, and had to show up at the gigs, and it was we went into it. Yeah, it was awesome. We went into it not knowing, are we going to lose money? I mean, it's a very long time to be over there as a brand new band that playing, but no, in the end, we came back. Everybody came back with a couple $1,000 in their pocket. I mean, it was an awesome experience. It was an amazing experience.
What type of venues were you playing on that tour? Was it just a weird assortment?
Yeah, definitely. We were not hitting any of the festival circuit or anything. It was too early in the year for that. And I don't think those bookers even knew about us yet. We were known because of our arrangement with Moon Records. We didn't have distribution in Europe, but Moon was exporting our records to Europe. So that within the ska network, people knew about us.
Okay.
And they had God Bless Satan.
Well, we played a mix of venues, though. We played somewhat large places, not huge places, and then we played, like the local bar kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like everything from the local bar to the local arts, state-supported arts venue, which they had a lot of those.
We played on a boat.
That's right. We played on a boat. We played in a movie, converted movie theater.
Yeah.
How many people were in the boat?
It's a famous boat.
2 bands played that night, so there were actually quite a few people on the boat. Played with a band called Skanken, and then it was kind of there. They set the show up, and then so they invited a lot of people then. It was great. And then they took us to a bar that they owned or co-owned or whatever. And we spent the night getting fucked up there.
I mean, it's this boat. A lot of ska bands have played on this boat, even up until the 2000s. I think maybe now it's retired. It sailed away from port, but this boat it's in Rostock, Germany. It was based out of Rostock, Germany, which is kind of near Hamburg.
Okay.
And it was called the Stubnitz.
The Stubnitz.
The SS Stubnitz.
Legendary German venue.
Yes. Everybody's played there. The Slackers have played it. The Toasters played it multiple times. And Mephiskapheles played there.
I want to go back to your tour with Blue Meanies. Have you toured with them multiple times, or was it just this one tour?
We did 2 national tours with Blue Meanies.
Okay, so if there's the closest band I can think of to you guys is the Blue Meanies.
Yeah.
Not still different, obviously, but you know, your bands that are rooted in ska, but you have these other elements in it that are similar. I would say there's some similarities in terms of the influences you guys are putting in, but also, you know, different.
Yeah, they were definitely one of the bands that we really enjoyed touring with.
Yeah,
because it was a great clash of styles and egos too, because we just wanted to, you know, outdo each other each night we played, and it just raised everyone's game. It was fantastic, really enjoyable tours.
Yeah,
great people too.
Yeah, so yeah, anything you remember from that tour in particular?
It's just the shows themselves. I mean, the idea that we were trying to outdo each other on stage every single night, and that sometimes they prevailed, sometimes we did, you know. But it was like the epitome of like competition is healthy, you know.
Yeah, it was just great. It was awesome.
Which member of the Blue Meanies is the most fun to hang out with?
Back then, maybe Chaz. I don't know. I don't know. Billy was always a blast.
They were all pretty cool to hang out with. Yeah.
So okay, let's go back to this. So Bill Laswell mixes your record. First off, could you tell people who Bill Laswell is? I mean, obviously he's very well known, but maybe not to ska fans.
Well, he's sort of a super producer, bass player, band leader. You know, largely associated with the avant-garde scene in New York City, but he also, made an album for Motorhead. He's did a dub album of Bob Marley. He did a dub album of Miles Davis, electric stuff. I mean, he's got incredible ears. And if you read the, Mark Wasserman's book.
Yeah, I read it, yeah.
Gaboon, right? Yeah, there's some quotes from Laswell in there about God Bless Satan, where he says, well, number one, that the reason he agreed to do the record was because he was intrigued by the Satanic Ska angle. But then he also said it was right up his alley because what Laswell was into was bringing the huge base of reggae, of dub reggae, and combining it with metal or other genres.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, so he applied that approach to us, and it fit perfectly like a glove.
Yeah. How did you connect with him? That's my first question. How did you connect with him?
We connected with him through a high school buddy of mine, Bill McKinney, who later played in Mephiskapheles and is on our third album, Mighty Whitey. Bill is a guitar player, and he was doing a project that Laswell was producing, which was for the Parliament Funkadelic guitarist Michael Hampton.
Mm.
And Michael Hampton had kind of taken Bill under his wing, and they were making this album. And Bill got friendly with Bill Laswell's office, with his office staff, with his secretary and so forth. And so he came to me and said, and Bill was always a Mephiskapheles fan and a big supporter of the band. And he came to me and said, listen, I want to give Laswell's people your tape, your rough mixes, and see if they'll do it if they'd be interested in working with you. And of course we were like, sure, go ahead, because all we had was these rough mixes that didn't sound too good, and we weren't sure how to complete this record. And so sure enough, like he gave it to Laswell. Laswell responded and said, I'll do it for free. I'll mix it for free. And he explains this in Wasserman's book as well, where he says that he had a policy of doing that for certain bands that caught his ear. He would offer to mix them for free or produce them for free because he was sure that this would be the only way this band would get their just desserts sonically and be able to make a run for it in the marketplace, so he did it out of the goodness of his heart, and it happened over a 2-day session. Robert Musso, the great who is a great producer in his own right. He produced Murphy's Law's first couple albums and a bunch of other classic punk albums. So he was the engineer for Laswell. but Laswell was the guy that set the sounds. And Michael, our original drummer, had a few notes on what he wanted certain songs to sound like and so on. And he gave these notes to Laswell, and Laswell, it was pretty minimal, but Laswell, it was enough to give him something to go on. And it turned out better than we ever imagined. And then we spared no expense on the mastering either. We spent $3,000 to get it mastered by Howie Weinberg. I don't know, does that name ring? He's probably retired by now, but this was like the guy who had mastered all the hit records up to that time.
Yeah, mastering is a very, very important part of the process.
Very important, yes.
Yeah.
And so so we spared no expense. And that was kind of our attitude in the early days. We were like, we were just scraping by. You know, we were all living very cheaply in Manhattan, which you could do back then. But when it came to the band, we were like, we're going to the best studio we can afford. We're going to get the best master. You know, we know this guy masters hits. We're going to get him. Even if we have to work 30 gigs for free, you know, to pay for it. That was kind of our attitude back then. It was all for one for all, for real.
It sounds good. It's a good sounding record. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I mean, aside from the actual music, I mean, the music's good too. I'm just saying the actual recording and mixing is great.
A lot of that's down to Laswell. I mean, he really heard the music inside what we're doing and brought it out.
Yeah. So you finished, you mastered it, and then you released it yourself, right?
Yes.
Now, as I understand it, you self-release it, you're touring, you're kind of building a name for yourself. It's getting out there, you're selling copies in this sort of DIY realm. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you just selling records, you know, at shows, or how is this album getting out?
Just at shows, but also through Bucket, Rob Hingley, and Moon Records distributing it for us to their network of models.
When does that happen? Because you release it, and then at some point you make a relationship, you make a deal with him that it's...
Yeah.
So when does that happen? In Defense of Ska, we'll be right back.
Things I Hate podcast. I'm Ollie.
What's up, pansies? I'm Andy.
Nice. Join us every Friday at noon as we talk about everything we hate, from news, politics, current events, and dolphin pee. That's right. You heard me. Dolphin pee. See you this Friday at noon. Things I Hate podcast.
Well, from early on, like even when we were pressing it ourselves, like literally going to the pressing plant and picking up the, you know, boxes of CDs ourselves, Bucket was buying them from us and then putting them into his distribution network.
I see. Okay. I mean, because I didn't know when I got the record, I just assumed I was buying a Moon Records album. I didn't know that, you know, I didn't understand the nuance of the deal. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm getting to that. It's like, so originally we were pressing it ourselves on our own label and everything like that. And then as we got more in demand on the road, we needed to come up with a solution. And it was basically a choice: either start our own record label for real, like open an office and have someone filling orders and stuff like that, or do a production distribution deal with Moon. In other words, let Moon manufacture this thing under its own imprint, under license from us, and distribute it. And it was a big debate within the band, you know, because we were making a massive profit pressing it ourselves, quite frankly.
Sure, yeah.
But you know, but the thing was that Bucket was also giving us, you know, triple the industry standard. In other words, we were getting, instead of getting $1 a record, as most labels were doing, he would give us $3 a record. Well, 3 is still a lot less than $9 a record, you know. You know, but the fact is, the road was calling, and we had to be out of town a lot, and so it was like, so we took a band vote, and we voted to let Bucket lease the master for 1 year, and then we extended it for another year. But that was the basis for future deals with him, like for Maximum Perversion, the same thing. Like he actually gave us an advance on that one, but it was still just the lease deal to him. Like we own all our masters that we've ever made.
Oh,
we've
okay.
never. The only time we ever sold a master outright was for the third album, and we ended up getting it back because we lost the deal. So, So basically we ended up doing a production distribution deal with Moon is the long and short of it. And that allowed us to get the record out there, to get product when we needed it, to be able to sell on the road, on the merch table. And it got us from A to B as far as becoming a live band that was in demand and was able to fulfill, the fans' expectations, basically.
It definitely seemed like one of the more popular Moon releases at the time.
It was. Bucket still tells me that to this day, that it's the second biggest selling record ever on Moon or something like that.
Oh, yeah. What's the first?
I think it's one of the early Toasters records that he just keeps repressing. Also, a little known fact is that we were the first, I believe, I'm not sure of this myself, but I read it from another critic wrote it. This guy, Dave Thompson, wrote that we were the first third wave band and certainly the first Moon band to get on MTV in 95. And then
that's probably true.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the Doomsday video, right?
Right. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the filming of that video.
Again, a completely independent project. We were distributing our album through Moon at that time, but Moon had nothing to do with the making of that video. They didn't give us any money for it or anything. We would play and save the money to do these things to advance the band. We engaged a guy who was
a friend of Mike's, I believe.
A friend of Michael Reich.
He was a filmmaker, and we got him to agree to be part of, the project of making this video. And so
I think we spent about $3,000 on the video.
Okay.
Shot on film.
Yeah. No, that's basically it. We contracted this guy to do it, and he did.
Yeah, and so we shot it at Wetlands and at Limelight primarily.
Oh, but also he came to where we would hang out at Cherry Tavern.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he came down to the East Village, which was the band's stomping grounds at the time, and filmed us in our natural habitat, hanging out at the bar with all the skinheads and stuff. So it was a good document of that time.
The devil or demon outfit, however you want to look at it, who made that? Where'd that come from?
That's all Andre. Andre used to dress up a lot.
Yeah.
For big shows, whatever.
I guess I don't remember at that show I saw if he was dressed up like that, but that was just how you dressed up.
Like, for example, like the last gig of a tour when we have our big homecoming show in New York, or something like that, or if we're playing with some huge band, then you give the audience a little something extra, in terms of the show. It's all to make it a special event, basically.
You can say if this is true or not, but this is in Mark's book. New York Times interviewed Michael. Is he pronounced it Michael, your drummer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because of that article, he called up MTV and said, "Look at this article. You should play my video, Doomsday." And they were like, "Okay."
It was even better story than that. He actually got into the MTV offices with a copy of the video and got it into the right person's hands right before a meeting.
He went in person?
I think so.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I seem to remember him telling me that story of how he actually got in there and got the video to the right person at the right time. That's how it worked back then, when there was no internet or anything. You had to get creative. If you wanted your package to stand out from other people's stuff, like, you had to come up with ideas like that. You had to be cheeky and just like push your way in sometimes.
Yeah.
To get to the front of the line, it was just a whole different time. It's a completely different time.
Did the video get played very often, or was it just a few times?
No, it got in rotation actually, and it got on the soundtrack of The Real World and Spring Break and all, stuff like that.
Huh.
No, they were pretty high on the video.
Yeah.
It was on 120 Minutes, of course. That everybody knows where it was introduced by Alice in Chains, and then it was introduced by Tim Armstrong.
Yeah.
But after that, they put it in rotation actually. So it was pretty flattering for us and pretty exciting. I mean, that's when we started to really take off and get recognized on the street and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it wasn't quite at the level of like some of the bigger ska hits, like Time Bomb or anything like that. But it was
Well, it was way before that. It was before that.
Yeah.
It was before that. Yeah.
Oh wow.
But it was not as big as that. But yeah, it was before that.
Not to diminish what Rancid did. I mean, like they did have some ska videos out by that point. I think they had Roots Radicals or whatever was out by that point or something. But we were pretty early in the game. You know, that often gets overlooked, like how early we were, and that we also and Brian, our keyboardist, points this out in the book. That when we went out there and started touring around, then it seemed like other bands started to loosen up and say, "Oh, we can be ourselves. You know, we don't have to be a copy of the Toasters anymore. We can be a little more expressive." I mean, I don't know if we really triggered that or not, but it kind of seemed like it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely one of the bands that you can point to from that era that has everything unique about you guys.
Yeah, and we weren't trying to be goofy. Like a lot of bands from that era were quite goofy. You know what I mean? And even today, even now, or in the 2000s, many ska bands take the goofy route. You know, funny clothes and silly attitudes and stuff. And to us, that's anathema to what ska's about. I mean, that's the Skatalites wouldn't be cut dead doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
you know. So I mean, we were different, certainly odd and unusual, but there was like you said in the beginning of this interview, there was like a serious edge to it that's what make people go like, wait a minute, what the hell is this? You know?
Yeah, for us, it's always been about the music. You know, the music has always come first, and everything else comes second. So, you know, when we come together and make music, and the fans are grooving with it, you know, and everything's hitting a high, you know, it can't feel any better, and so that's why we keep doing it.
So before we started recording, you guys mentioned that you tour in a church bus.
That's correct.
And so when did you get the church bus?
Let's say just about the story of our vehicles. In 2018, we went on tour Streetlight Manifesto, and we bought ourselves an RV that didn't make it to one show. Now, we made it to all the shows. You know, we got in a minivan, we left that thing on the side of the road. But we got smarter about our vehicles since then, and our guitar player Adam is a super mechanic, so it's actually his bus. It's a school bus, short bus, fit all of our gear, all of our merch, and 7 dudes all into this school bus. But we named it the church bus because it seemed appropriate.
Sure.
And it gets us everywhere we got to go. It just took us all over the U.S. this past 2 weeks, Texas through New Orleans and back. And the church bus is our ride. It's fantastic.
It's great.
It doesn't go very fast.
What's the top speed on the church bus?
Yes, pushing 70 is going to make it rumble.
66.6 miles per hour.
Yes,
that's where it is.
Is it somebody? You know, if people see you arrive, it's a good arrival, right? Like there's the church bus.
I love this bus. Yeah, yeah, they love it.
They love it.
We even have church bus stickers we sell at the merch table.
Yeah,
dude.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, let's go through some of the other vehicles in the band's history. What else have you taken on tour?
Well, we had the one Bitz just mentioned that met a fiery demise. The caught on fire. We had to abandon it.
There's been a couple of those.
Yeah, that's right. We had another RV in the 90s, the one that we did all those long tours with the Blue Meanies in, and that one also caught on fire. Not the engine, mind you, but the actual body part that we were riding in.
How did it catch on fire?
Yeah.
Well, it's 2 different reasons. Like the second one, it was apparently it was a broken wheel bearing on one of the dualies in the back, and so the tire was just scraping the freeway for miles, and then it ignited, and we smelled it, we heard the noise, and we said, what the hell is that? And our sax player at the time, who was driving, fortunately drove us to a large truck stop plaza where there was a lot of fire extinguishers, and some bystanders saw us coming in there and immediately grabbed fire extinguishers, started spraying our vehicle. And so we jumped out and ran away. But that was a close one. If we had just pulled to the side of the road, I'm quite sure the whole thing would have burned. You know, there would have been no way to put out the fire. So we were very fortunate that the guy driving took us to this place where there's plenty of fire extinguishers. But anyway, the one before that was a similar RV, and that one I don't know what caused it. Maybe something with the exhaust system, I guess. But like basically the wall caught on fire. Smoke started coming into the thing, and we actually bashed a hole in the wall and poured beers into it. We poured like a 12-pack into the wall of the RV and kept going. It just kept while we were driving, and just put out the fire that way. And then when we returned the vehicle to the guy we'd been renting it from, he wouldn't let us have it back. So he thought we had abused it. It smelled like beer back there, and
one of them also had an engine that got totally fucked up.
That was the same one. Yep, we had to replace the engine at one point.
Oh, that was the one when we were in Albany or whatever. The horn,
the Mallard. Yeah, we blew the engine in Portland, Oregon, and had to rent a vehicle, go all the way down to San Diego or Las Vegas, I forget, and then we did a 58-hour round trip to go pick up the fixed RV. It was insane. Literally 58 hours not getting out of the van.
Oh man,
it was absolutely nuts.
We never miss a show.
But we didn't miss a show. That's right. We did not miss a show. That's right. And then there was one other vehicle before that, the first vehicle we ever bought, which was a small, it's kind of like the church bus, actually, similar size and layout. And that one lasted a couple of years. It was a good vehicle, but unfortunately we had a little accident. So
what happened with the accident?
Yeah, I was the one driving, actually, and like we were in Iowa, but the hilly part of Iowa. Mm-hmm. And it was a 2-lane road, and I was stuck behind a truck forever and ever. And finally I saw daylight, and I thought I could pass. But as it happened, I passed on a crossroads, and the guy decided to turn left while I was passing him. So we got knocked off the road, but we didn't flip or topple over. But we had all survived. Everything was fine. The insurance covered it. But the vehicle was never quite the same again.
Yeah.
So drove it for a little while longer, and then we had to get rid of it.
So after God Bless Satan, there's between that album and Maximum Perversion, there's a bit of lineup changes, right?
Just the drummer, I believe.
Oh, is it just a drummer? Okay. The record's a little different direction. I'm curious if you could speak on that at all.
Well, essentially, I mean, to oversimplify it, like the first record, a lot of those songs were composed by the rhythm section, mm-hmm. and were dated to the early days of the band. And then we were on the road having a wonderful time for 3 years almost. And then we realized, oh my God, we need to come out with a second album. We're late, thinking about this. And so it was like, okay, who's got songs? And it was the horn players that time, for the most part, that came up with the music. So that's why it's a totally different flavor.
And also the replacement of the original drummer, Michael, with Wayne Dutton, my good friend who I've known since high school. Obviously Wayne brings a totally different sound and a different vibe, and has been doing it in the band since then, since 97, 96, really.
Wayne has been our drummer ever since the second album. And he's a tremendous drummer. I mean, incredible drummer.
Did Wayne play in any other bands before Mephiskapheles?
Not ska bands, but tons of other kinds of bands.
Like what type of music?
Well, I personally played in a jazz quartet with Wayne, and also I played in like a modern rock band with Wayne. So we had a lot of musical history and a lot of different musical styles, and you can kind of hear that in Mephiskapheles as well. Bring a lot of different kind of beats, different kind of rhythms, and Wayne really drives that.
Totally. It makes such a difference when you have a drummer that can literally play anything you can imagine. I mean, he's not limited in any way. So, I mean, you can just imagine for guys who are writing music for this band, that's heaven.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that the more horn written, because you can hear it seems like a lot more horns going on too in those on Maximum Perversion.
Yeah, I mean, as a result, the album flopped horribly when it came out. I mean, it's seen as a classic now, but when it came out, everybody was expecting more God Bless Satan style stuff, and obviously we didn't deliver that. So that album took a good 10, 15 years for the public to accept it.
What about Mighty White-Ay? How did that one do?
similar thing, but that one didn't really get a chance because unfortunately the deal got screwed up early on. We had a problem and the album got pulled from shelves. So we didn't really get a chance to see how far it went. I mean, it debuted at number 198 on the Billboard chart or whatever, on the modern rock chart. It looked like it was going places, but then unfortunately we got hit with a lawsuit and the label got hit with a lawsuit also, and the whole thing just fell apart.
Was that not a Moon release?
Mighty Whitey? No, not at all. No, we actually recorded by, of all people, Walter Yetnikoff, the famous CBS Sony executive, the guy who masterminded Bruce Springsteen's career and Michael Jackson's career. If you can believe this, I'm serious. He wanted, and he was trying to come out of retirement. He had retired for a while because he had a big scandal and some other personal issues, and he had retired from the business, and he decided he wanted to come back. And so he went around and signed a bunch of bands, and he signed us, he signed the Kinks, he signed the Super Suckers, and the Scorpions. I mean, this was going to be the label. It sounds crazy, right? But it's 100% true. And in the end, what ended up happening is Yetnikoff got cold feet. He said, you know what? I guess I don't really want to get back in the music business. I already did my thing. And so then our contract got sold to Koch Records, which became E1 Music and is now called something else. I forget, but they're a big player, they're tantamount to a major label. And so it came out on Koch, and all that was good, and it got wide distribution, and it, like I said, it was getting service to radio, and everything was looking great. We had an excellent contract, guaranteeing us all sorts of perks and money and everything. But unfortunately, we got hit with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, and that just torpedoed the whole thing, and that's directly what led to our hiatus for 10 plus years.
What was the lawsuit over?
It was our trumpet player, and he was upset because it's too much to get into, to be honest. But
gotcha.
But it had to do with him basically exploiting the partnership law. We had a partnership structure, which is really not. Hey, kids, don't make your band a partnership, okay? Don't do it. It gives you a big Achilles heel if one of the partners wants to take the whole thing down. And that's what he did. He was very spiteful, and he decided, well, if I'm not going to be in this band, then no one can be in the band. And we tried to play through it and just continued. We had no shortage of bookings. We were very popular, even while the third wave was crashing. We were kind of picking up the Boss Tones crowd at that point, and we were doing quite well. But when the label pulled the rug out from under us, that was it, because we had, going against our ordinary principles, which are not to sell our masters to somebody or put ourselves in someone else's care. Yeah. We did it this time because the amount of money was correct and the contract was correct. So we did it. But in the end, we got burned because once the lawsuit hit, the label didn't want to know us. They didn't want to take our calls. And we were out on our own once again, only without that independent, freedom that we had before. So we were hindered. And ultimately, Andre and I together made the decision, like, look, we were losing too much money, and it was just impossible to continue, basically. Now, have we second-guessed that decision 10,000 times since then? Yes, of course. But at the time, it was a very dark picture for Mephiskapheles. One of our own had basically tried to take us down and ultimately succeeded. We tried to play through it. We just couldn't.
Yeah, band dynamics are so intense, and they could be very hurtful when they go sour.
Well, when you're 10 years in, and everyone's only making less than 10,000 a year from it, because the overhead is so damn high when you're touring with 8 guys. People start to want answers, and they want to say, like, okay, I should be more successful. The band should be more successful. I should be getting paid more, and stuff like that. And all that stuff is negative and detrimental to a band. So even though we had all our ducks in a row, we were poised to absolutely succeed on a higher level than ever before. That's one thing to know that, but it's another thing to convince other people of it when they're already kind of fed up and getting tired of their wives picking on them about it, or job, saying, "Hey, come on, you can't keep going on tour." So it's a natural thing.
Was there any song or songs that were sort of either doing well or poised to do well from that record?
Well, we never got the chance, actually. The single was supposed to be Social Theory, Spoonful of Sugar. You know that one?
Yeah.
That was supposed to be the single. We had a large video budget written into the contract. And so that was going to be the thing. That was going to be the next order of business, was to that single and make this video. But once the lawsuit hit, it was like we were poisoned. We were absolute poison. No one wanted to deal with us, let alone our own label.
Did you have a video idea in mind for that song?
I don't recall, honestly, but
okay.
We really never got even to that stage. I mean, we got as far as booking a national tour. We did one national tour as a Koch Records artist, and we had a U.S. tour and a Europe tour booked, and that's when the bottom just fell out. So it's just one of those things. I mean, it's a very tough business, and if things don't go perfect, a lot can go wrong. So, but the bright side of this is that we came back. We persevered. Yeah. We didn't let this make us become bitter or say, "Oh, screw this band." We said, "No, we cannot go out like that. This music is too good. This concept is too good. The band is too good to let one guy, who has a stomach ache, take us down." So we stuck to our guns, and I'm so glad we did.
What was your first show back?
We did a cruise around Manhattan with Inspector 7. That was really for the hardcore fans, who really loved both of those bands. And then after that, the offers just started coming in. We got the offer for Riot Fest very shortly after that.
Had you been talking about reforming for a while, or tell me a little bit about that and what made you decide to finally give it a go?
We always wanted to reform.
We always wanted to reform. I mean, we kept talking about it, Greg and I, for
years, for a decade.
Basically, after everything shut down, we were talking about it because we were pissed enough to be at the time, of course, you sort of want to shut it down, but you couldn't really, because you as Greg already mentioned, the concept's great, the music's great, the players are great. So it was just well, let's just let it float for a bit, and we'll do other things. And we just kept talking about it and talking about it and talking about it until finally we were like, all right, it's time to do it. I mean, we did other things. We did musical things, but we were like, it's time to do this shit now. So,
yeah, we stayed busy and active as musicians the whole time. But what really allowed the band to come back was getting rid of that lawsuit. We were able to convince the person who sued us to just that, look, man, this is useless and it's holding everything back. And then he eventually saw the light and withdrew the lawsuit.
Yep.
Which is what you have to do when you live in New York, because it's in California, if you don't prosecute something, it's gone after 5 years. But in New York, it just hangs around and hangs around and hangs around.
Oh,
so you really need the person to actually physically go there and to the court and withdraw the lawsuit. And eventually we got him to actually do that. And then once we did that, it was like everything just opened up again. It was like we never left. I mean, it was kind of uncanny in that way.
Any show, and since you've been back, that you feel like is your best, show in this modern era?
No, there've been too many of them.
Yeah.
This last tour, the show in Charlotte, which was on Friday night this last week, just fucking wrecked. It was, everyone had their face blown off. It was so good, and so
another standout to me was this is not Croydon Fest too, right?
Yes, that was a lot of fun. But then we also had this really great shows when we the Streetlight run.
Mm-hmm.
We had some amazing shows there too. So
yeah, I bet.
There were a lot of people who had never seen us before, so we gained a lot of new fans there. But we also had a lot of people who have been waiting to see us for 25, 30 years and finally got a chance. So, it was a lot of fun there.
And especially on this last run, there were quite a few people who were like, okay, bucket list scratch. Quite a few there, just bucket list. Heard about you guys. My older brother or sister, whatever, gave me this. Never thought I'd ever see you guys. Couldn't believe you guys are back playing. I can scratch it off now. It was amazing. It was great. And one of the cooler things, talking about the mix of the styles and all that shit. What's really good about that is that, we keep getting, well, even since we came back and did those big streetlight tours, we keep getting people who, that never seen us and they're not even into, this type of music, that are just totally blown away. And that's always cool. A lot of people who are like into metal or whatever are totally blown away by the band.
Yeah. In Charlotte, that show Bitz was talking about, we played with this metal, really great metal band called Violent Life, Violent Death.
Yeah.
And they said, we grew up listening to Mephiskapheles. It's an honor to play with these guys. Like, it's wild. I had the same thing from the dudes in Circa Survive when I was with the Toasters and playing with them. Like, they were like, yeah, we all grew up listening to Mephiskapheles. It's like, okay. But they don't sound anything like Mephiskapheles.
No.
What they're doing, But, yeah, so I always kind of say, like, you can put us in front of 100 people, like 20 of them will like us. And there's no predicting who those 20 will be. 20, 25 people. You don't know who they're going to be. You can't tell. They could be, a lot of ska fans don't like us, but you just can't tell. We just appeal to a certain swath of the population, but it could be anybody, So this thing is really ripe to be, to go on TV or something where we can reach a lot of people at once, because I think a lot of people are going to dig it, quite frankly. Yeah. Especially the way the band's sounding now. I mean, we are taking care of business. Let me tell you, you got to come check us out when we come to your neck of the woods.
Yeah, please come to California.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you so much for listening to In Defense of Ska. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you normally stream or download episodes. If you haven't already, grab a copy of my book, In Defense of Ska, available at clashbooks.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. It's at In Defense of Ska. And please consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/In Defense of Ska. You will get monthly bonus episodes, extended interviews and commentary per episode, and access to the In Defense of Ska Discord. In Defense of Ska would not be possible without the great team that tirelessly works on it every week. So you should go check out their other projects as well. Co-host Adam Davis has an amazing band called Omnigon. Give them a follow on Instagram and Twitter. It's simply at Omnigon. And our editor, Chris Reeves, has a phenomenal record label and podcast called Ska Punk International. For more information, go to skapunkinternational.com. And if you've ever enjoyed one of the highly specific In Defense of Ska memes floating around the interwebs, it was likely the work of The Bands I Like Only Charge $18. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And on that note, we leave you by saying, Ska now more than ever.
Are you in a band with a new album coming out? Are you an artist wanting more people to check out your work? Is there an event you want to promote? Do you own or run a company that sells a cool product or service? In Defense of Ska gets over 10,000 unique downloads each month. If you're interested in advertising on the podcast, we offer very reasonable rates and can help with the production of the ad. The ads are dynamic, meaning they will be placed on every episode for a given period of time. If you're interested, direct message us or email us at indefenseofska